Autumn in Minnesota is brief. Once the fall foliage ends and cold winds begin to blow, the snowy season arrives quickly. On an evening that signaled the end of such an autumn, Linda Morrison was selecting ingredients for dinner at the supermarket, still wearing her pharmacy uniform. "I'll make Noah's favorite spaghetti tonight," she said to herself as she picked up a jar of tomato sauce. Linda was a woman whose gentle expression revealed her intelligence. Working as a pharmacist at the local drugstore, she was trusted by both her colleagues and patients. When she arrived home, her 6-year-old son Noah came running out from the entrance. "Mom! Look! I scored a goal at soccer today." Noah waved a paper in his hand, his blue eyes sparkling. The paper had a "well done" stamp from his teacher. Linda put down her shopping bags and embraced her son. "That's wonderful. Dad will be so proud when he gets home." As Linda headed to the kitchen, Noah followed her with his little feet. Outside the window, it was already beginning to get dark, and the streetlights were coming on one by one. "What time is Dad coming home today?" Noah asked. Linda paused for a moment, then smiled. "Probably a little later than usual. Dad says he has an appointment to sell a big house." Eric Morrison was a well-known real estate broker in the area. He was known for his cheerful personality and negotiation skills. After 10 years of marriage, he and Linda had their adorable son Noah. They had built a home in a quiet suburban neighborhood and were considered an enviable, happy family by their friends. While preparing dinner, Linda occasionally glanced out the window. Eric had been coming home late more frequently in recent weeks, saying he was busy with work. "Mom, I'm excited about my soccer game," Noah said as he twirled spaghetti around his fork. "I'm going to show everyone the kicking technique Dad taught me." "Noah, elbows off the table," Linda gently reminded him, smiling at her son's enthusiasm. Eric had started volunteering as a coach for Noah's soccer team and spent weekends accompanying them to practice in the park. Watching the father-son bond grow stronger was Linda's greatest joy. After dinner, as usual, the two sat on the living room sofa, and Linda read Noah a picture book. This was the happiest time of her day, feeling the scent of Noah's soft hair while they both immersed themselves in the world of stories. "Mom, what happens next?" Noah asked with wide eyes just as they heard the front door open. "Dad's home." Noah jumped up happily and ran to the entrance. Dad. I scored a goal at soccer today." Eric lifted his son high in the air despite his tired expression. "Is that right? That's amazing, champion." Linda looked at her husband's face. His usual brightness seemed a bit clouded, but he smiled and kissed her. "Sorry I'm late. Had a big deal today." "It's okay. I kept dinner warm for you," Linda smiled back. "I want to talk to you after Noah goes to bed." Eric nodded, looking slightly tense. After Noah was asleep, the couple sat facing each other at the dining table. Eric picked up a wine glass and asked, "What did you want to talk about?" "Our 10th wedding anniversary is next month," Linda said excitedly. "What do you think about taking Noah to Disneyland? A little trip for the three of us." Eric lowered his gaze and swirled his glass. "Oh, that's right, but I'm a bit busy right now. It might be difficult to take time off." A look of disappointment crossed Linda's face. "But, Eric, it's our 10th anniversary. I've been planning it for a while." I know, Eric said hastily. "But it's really an important time right now. Instead, how about you and Noah go fishing? You can spend the day with friends." Linda silently stared at her husband. She sensed something was wrong but couldn't pinpoint what it was. "All right," she finally said. "But, Eric, you've changed quite a bit lately. Is there a problem?" Eric quickly shook his head. "No, nothing at all. I'm just busy with work." He stood up and placed his hand on Linda's shoulder. Don't worry. Everything will be fine. No one knows when an ordinary day will turn into the worst day of their life. Linda's nightmare began on a perfectly normal morning. Eric, the phone rang several times last night, Linda asked as she brewed coffee for breakfast. Who was it from? Eric hastily stuffed toast into his mouth and said, "Oh, from a new client. I have an important business meeting today." His eyes shifted a bit nervously. I see, Linda observed her husband's behavior as she picked up her mug. Can you take Noah to school today? I need to get to the pharmacy early this morning. Oh, sure, Eric checked his watch. Actually, I have an appointment with an important client tomorrow too. I think I'll be back in the afternoon. Linda nodded, but she felt something strange about Eric's words. He had been talking a lot about new clients lately, but never went into specifics. The next morning, Linda woke up at her usual time. Eric's side of the bed was already empty. She walked down the hallway to wake Noah. Noah, time to get up, she said, knocking on the door. When there was no answer, she opened it. The small bed was empty. The pillow was dented, but the blanket was neatly arranged. Linda was a bit confused. Noah rarely got up on his own and made his bed. Noah. She looked in the closet and checked the bathroom. Her son was nowhere to be found. When she returned to the living room, Eric was eating breakfast. Oh, good morning, Linda said, somewhat surprised. Where's Noah? Eric looked up from his newspaper. Hasn't he gotten up yet? But there's no one in his room. Linda began to feel anxious. Eric stood up and said, Really? He walked down the hallway and looked at Noah's room. You're right, he's not here. What's going on? Linda's voice trembled slightly. Where did he go? Eric maintained his composure, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. Oh, I remember now. Noah said he didn't want to go to school, so I decided to take him to work with me today. Don't worry. But his shoes and jacket are still at the entrance. Linda was confused. Oh, he has others in the car, Eric answered simply. Well, I'm going to be late. I'll be home early tonight. With that, Eric hurriedly left the house. Linda was a bit worried, but Eric's explanation made sense. Noah sometimes wanted to skip school. She took a deep breath and began preparing for work. That day at the pharmacy felt longer than usual. Linda called Eric several times during breaks, but all calls went to voicemail. He must be busy, she told herself. As closing time approached, Linda checked the clock. 5:30 p.m. She would be home soon. She left Eric one last message, I'm heading home. Are you both waiting for me there? There was no reply. When she arrived home, the house was eerily quiet. There were no shoes or coats at the entrance. Eric? Noah? Linda searched the entire house. There was a note on the kitchen table. We'll be late. Go to bed without me. Just that short message. Linda called Eric's cell phone again, but couldn't get through. She also contacted the parents of Noah's friends, but no one had seen him. Anxiety gradually began turning into fear. At 9 p.m., Linda called Eric's company. A night receptionist answered. Eric Morrison. He didn't come to the office today, the woman said. His schedule indicated he had outside appointments. Linda's heart raced. Was his son with him? A 6-year-old boy? No, I haven't seen him, the woman sounded a bit confused. Is there a problem? Linda hung up and called the police with trembling hands. My husband and son are missing, she explained with a voice on the verge of tears. I haven't been able to contact them since this morning. Ma'am, please calm down, the police officer replied in a steady voice. Since it hasn't been 24 hours yet, we can't officially start a search, but I'll notify officers on patrol. Please give me details about the two. Linda desperately provided details about her husband and son. Eric's car information, their clothing, how they looked when she last saw them. Even after providing all this information, the police's response remained calm. In most cases, they return within 24 hours. That night, Linda couldn't sleep at all. She called Eric's cell phone repeatedly and checked the house multiple times. She looked out the window and rushed to the door whenever she heard a car, but Eric and Noah didn't return. In the morning, Linda went back to the police station. "My son is only 6 years old," she pleaded with the officer in charge. "Please, start searching for him." The officer seemed moved by her desperate appeal. "All right. We'll begin an official search. We'll also need to investigate your home." That afternoon, police officers searched Linda's house, and Noah's photo was made public. They also tried to locate Eric's car and track his cell phone, but no clues were found. "We found nothing," the detective in charge said. "Mrs. Morrison, did your husband have any problems? Debts, or troubles at work?" Linda shook her head. "No, I don't think so." But deep in her heart, she was concerned about Eric's recent changes. He had certainly been hiding something. "Do you have friends or relatives you can stay with?" the detective asked. "It's not good for you to be alone." "My sister is coming," Linda answered weakly. "But I want to wait here. In case they come back." The detective nodded understandingly. "We'll contact you right away if there are any developments." On the morning of the third day after the incident, Noah's favorite backpack was found on Linda's doorstep. A blue Spider-Man bag. It was something Noah took everywhere. The police immediately investigated the bag. Inside were his clothes and a note with an unknown phone number. "This is from a disposable cell phone," the detective explained. "We're checking the call records." The possibility of kidnapping has increased, he carefully chose his words. "Please allow us to install surveillance cameras at your house." Linda's world was crumbling. Every day felt like a nightmare. Media outlets began covering the case, and she found herself exposed to accusations and sympathy from strangers. What was that mother doing? Poor thing, I hope that child is safe. But she didn't give up. Remembering Noah's smile, she continued to pray for his safe return. And a week after the incident, she received a call from the police station. "Mrs. Morrison, could you come to the station? We have new information." Linda headed to the police station with mixed feelings of hope and fear. There, Detective Jenkins was waiting for her with a grave expression. "About your husband." The moment she heard those words, Linda broke down in tears. She intuitively sensed that something terrible had happened. The small conference room at the police station was unusually bright, with fluorescent light reflecting off the walls. Linda sat in a chair, waiting for Detective Jenkins' words. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and her hands were trembling uncontrollably. "Mrs. Morrison," Detective Jenkins sat deep in his chair and looked straight into her eyes. "This is very difficult to tell you, but we have discovered extremely concerning evidence about your husband Eric's actions." Linda leaned forward, feeling her breath becoming difficult. "What do you mean?" "Noah. Is my son safe?" Detective Jenkins took a deep breath and said, "At this stage, we haven't located Noah yet, but he paused momentarily as if choosing his words. "He was definitely kidnapped. And the person involved in that kidnapping is your husband, Eric." Something collapsed within Linda. She suddenly felt as if the room's temperature had dropped. "No, that can't be. Eric. He loves his son." "I'm sorry," Detective Jenkins said quietly. He opened a brown file on the table and took out several photographs. "Please look at these photos." Linda's trembling hand reached for the photos. The first showed Eric talking with unfamiliar men in a hotel lobby. The next showed Eric handing over a large amount of cash, and another showed him entering an old warehouse in an industrial area. "We've been monitoring the activities of a human trafficking organization for several months," Detective Jenkins continued his explanation quietly. "And last week, we discovered that your husband had been in contact with this organization." Linda's hand dropped the photos. Her head was spinning, and she had a ringing in her ears. "No, this is a mistake. Eric wouldn't do such a thing." "Mrs. Morrison," the detective's voice took on a severity. "Eric had accumulated significant debt. From gambling and a relationship with another woman." Linda's heart froze. "Another woman?" "I'm sorry," the detective's expression was genuinely apologetic. "It seems Eric had been having an affair for about 2 years. With a woman named Carol Hunter. He had spent large sums of money to maintain this relationship and had accumulated further debt through gambling." Linda clutched her chest. It felt like she couldn't breathe. 2 years ago, that was when they had purchased their new home and Eric had seriously begun his career in real estate. He had truly been busy. She had never suspected anything. "And the worst part," Detective Jenkins continued in a heavy voice, "Eric was trying to sell Noah to a human trafficking organization to repay his debts and start a new life." Linda's scream echoed throughout the room. She covered her face with both hands and trembled. "That's a lie. That can't be true. Eric isn't that kind of person." "Unfortunately, we have evidence," the detective played a recording on his phone. "The child is healthy and smart. I'll deliver him as instructed, so have the promised amount ready." It was Eric's voice. There was no mistaking it. Linda covered her mouth with trembling hands. "How? Why?" Her voice was hoarse. Tears welled up in her eyes and streamed down her cheeks. Detective Jenkins offered her water. Linda took it but couldn't drink. Her hands were shaking too much. "For the past 2 years, Eric has accumulated considerable debt. At least $500,000 from gambling and gifts for his mistress," the detective explained calmly. "And then creditors began closing in on him. He may have felt he had no choice." Linda shook her head. "No matter the circumstances, selling your own child, that's not an option." Her voice trembled with anger. "You're right," the detective agreed. However, there was a turning point. His expression softened slightly. "After taking Noah, Eric made contact with members of the organization, but at the last moment, it seems he couldn't go through with the plan." Linda stared at the detective. "What do you mean?" "According to surveillance footage, he fled just before handing Noah over," the detective continued. "From our understanding, he broke his promise to the organization and is now on the run with Noah." "But that means..." Linda began to feel hope. "Noah is still safe. With Eric." "We believe so," the detective's expression softened slightly. "However, members of the organization are likely pursuing Eric and Noah." "What about that backpack?" Linda asked, suddenly remembering. "Probably a sign from Eric," the detective explained. "The phone number in the memo was from a disposable cell phone that was used only once. We couldn't track the call content, but from GPS records, we know the phone was last used near the state border." Linda looked at the memo with trembling hands. There was a phone number in small initials, EM, written on it. It was Eric's sign. "We are now searching with all our resources," the detective gently told her. "However, members of the organization are doing the same. They don't forgive those who betray them." Suddenly, the conference room door opened, and a young officer entered, out of breath. "Detective Jenkins, urgent communication. A child believed to be Mrs. Morrison's son was spotted at an abandoned gas station in the north. He was with a man." Linda stood up. Take me there. Right now. Detective Jenkins hesitated for a moment, then said, "It could be dangerous. The organization's people are probably searching too." "That's my son," Linda said with determination. "Whatever happens, I'm going to find him." Seeing her resolve, the detective nodded. "All right. But please follow our instructions." As the police car sped northward, Linda's mind was filled with prayers for her son's safety and the betrayal of her husband. The truth about Eric tore her heart apart. The man she had loved, the husband she had lived with for 10 years, the father of Noah, he had betrayed them. But perhaps he was trying to protect their son now. "Wait for me, Noah. Mommy's coming to see you soon," Linda whispered. The police car's siren echoed on the lonely country road at dusk. From the passenger seat next to Detective Jenkins, Linda desperately stared ahead. With winter's early sunset, the sky was already beginning to darken. "We'll be there in about 10 minutes, the detective told Linda. His voice was calm but filled with tension. Information came intermittently over the police radio. Suspicious vehicle heading south from the scene. Confirmed a person who appears to be a child. Driver matches Eric Morrison's description. Detective Jenkins gripped the steering wheel tightly and muttered, "They're moving too." Linda felt a tightening in her chest. Was Noah safe? Was Eric really trying to protect their son? Questions raced through her mind. After driving for about 10 minutes on a rough road, they saw a car stopped ahead. "That's Eric's car," Linda exclaimed. How many times had she seen that silver sedan that Eric drove home in every night? As the police car approached, they could see a small figure crouched beside the car and a man standing next to it. Linda's heart leaped. "Noah!" She opened the door and jumped out before the car had completely stopped. "Mommy!" A small voice came from the darkness. Noah ran toward Linda, crying out loud. The moment she saw him, hot tears flowed from Linda's eyes. She embraced her son and touched his whole body as if to make sure he was unharmed. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Linda asked desperately. Her hands enveloped Noah's small body as if she would never let go again. Noah shook his head while crying. "I was scared of Dad. He said we were going to meet strangers, but I said I didn't want to." His voice trembled. Linda held her son's head and buried her face in his soft hair. He was alive. He was safe. That was all that mattered to her now. Eric was leaning against the car, surrounded by police officers. His face was exhausted, and his eyes were hollow. His shoulders were slumped as if he had used up all his energy. "Linda!" He called out weakly. "I'm sorry. Linda entrusted Noah to a young female officer and approached Eric on shaky legs. Anger, sadness, and relief swirled within her. "Why?" Her voice trembled with anger and sorrow. "Our son, you tried to sell your own child." "I couldn't do it." Eric slumped his shoulders. "When I met them and saw Noah's face filled with fear, I wondered what I was trying to do." His voice was agonized. "I'm the worst father, scum of the earth." "So you ran?" Detective Jenkins coldly inquired. He was approaching Eric with handcuffs, not moving away from him. "Yes, but they came after us. They're still pursuing us," Eric said painfully. "I kept running to protect Noah." Eric raised his face. "I'm the worst father. But at the very end, I want to think I was able to protect my son." Linda felt intense anger but was also struck by complex emotions. On one hand, she hated her husband, but on the other, she felt a slight gratitude that he had ultimately protected their son. However, those feelings would never turn into forgiveness. "You tried to sell our son for your debts, for another woman," Linda said with a trembling voice. That, I can never forgive. At that moment, they heard the sound of a car engine in the distance. Detective Jenkins reached for his radio, requesting backup. Vehicles believed to be from the organization are approaching. Linda, take Noah into the car, he ordered. The young female officer started carrying Noah toward the police car. But at that moment, Eric shouted, "They're coming." He suddenly straightened up and looked at Linda. "Linda, please take care of Noah." A look of determination appeared in his eyes. A black SUV appeared, raising dust, and the officers readied their weapons. 3 men got out of the car, and they too were armed. "Hand over the woman and child," the tall man in the center commanded. "Morrison, you broke the contract. But you can still make amends." Eric tensed. His eyes were filled with determination. "Stay away from my family." Time seemed to flow in slow motion. Eric suddenly pulled something out of his pocket. Before anyone could identify what it was, one of the officers shouted, "Weapon." "No!" Eric desperately shouted, but it was too late. The men from the organization opened fire simultaneously. Gunshots echoed in the winter night sky. Eric's body fell backward as if pushed. The officers returned fire, and a chaotic shootout began. "Eric!" Linda screamed, but the female officer pulled her behind the police car. "Get down!" Linda embraced Noah protectively and closed her eyes. "Mom, I'm scared," Noah trembled. "It's okay, Noah. Mommy will protect you." Linda held her son's small body tightly. After a few minutes, silence returned. "It's safe now," Detective Jenkins' voice. When Linda cautiously raised her face, all the men from the organization had been apprehended. One was lying on the ground, and the other 2 were being restrained by officers. However, Eric remained on the ground. Blood was spreading across his chest. Linda approached Eric with trembling legs. Noah, still in the female officer's arms, looked at his father with an uncomprehending expression. "Linda, please take care of Noah," Eric said in a blood-tinged voice. "I wasn't worthy of you both." Linda took Eric's hand, tears streaming down her face. This was the man who had been her husband. The man she had loved. They had laughed together, cried together, and raised a child together. And now, he was losing his life. Why did it come to this? She asked. "I was weak." Eric smiled painfully. "But at the end, I was able to do the right thing." His hand gripped Linda's tightly. "I won't ask for forgiveness, but make Noah happy." When the ambulance siren was heard in the distance, Eric's eyes closed. His hand slipped from Linda's. Linda stood up and went to Noah. She lifted him up and looked into his eyes. "It's okay, Noah. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore." Her words were directed not only at her son but also at herself. After a long, nightmarish week, her son was finally safe. But her life had changed forever. The Eric she had known did not exist, and the family image she had believed in was an illusion. The road ahead would be long and difficult. But at this moment, there was one thing she was certain of, the presence of Noah sleeping safely in her arms. That alone was what sustained her heart. 3 months after Eric's funeral, Linda and Noah's life was gradually finding a new form. The funeral was small and quiet. Apart from Linda and Noah, only a few colleagues and police officers attended. As quiet music played in the church, Linda grappled with complex emotions. "Did Dad go to heaven?" Noah asked in a small voice on the way home from the funeral. Linda put her arm around her son's shoulder and answered, "Yes, but Dad did something very brave at the end." Amid her mixture of anger and sadness, it was true that Eric had tried to protect their son in his final moments. Police investigations revealed that Eric's mistress, Carol Hunter, was the sister of the human trafficking organization's boss. She had been using Eric from the beginning. She seems to have been using Eric from the start, Detective Jenkins explained. She got him into debt and eventually pressured him to sell his child to the organization. This organization had been buying and selling children across borders for years. The detective's words eased Linda's pain slightly. Eric's actions were unforgivable, but perhaps he too had been a victim in some way. The fact that his final action led to the dismantling of the organization and the rescue of many children also left complex feelings in her heart. At the end of spring, Linda decided to move to a new town with Noah. She received Eric's life insurance money but used part of it to establish a foundation called Children's Hope. This organization, which supported victims of human trafficking and children at risk, became her new mission. The new house was near a lake, and the blue water surface could be seen from the window. Noah started attending a new school and was gradually regaining his smile. He still had nightmares at night, but with the help of a psychological counselor, he was healing bit by bit. One evening, while walking along the lakeshore, Noah suddenly stopped. "Mom, was Dad a bad person?" His blue eyes were serious. Linda took a deep breath and carefully chose her words. "People are complicated, Noah. They can do both good and bad things. Dad made a big mistake, but in the end, he did the right thing. And most importantly, Dad loved you." After thinking for a while, Noah said, "I'll remember Dad. Both the good and the bad." His small voice conveyed a deep understanding beyond his years. Linda stroked her son's head and gazed at the lake's surface dyed by the sunset. She still couldn't fully forgive Eric, but it was true that his final action had saved many children. And through this painful experience, she herself had become stronger. "What are we doing tomorrow?" Noah asked. His eyes were shining with hope for the future. Linda smiled. "What would you like to do?" "We have many options." Their new life, while bearing the pain of the past, was gradually filling with light of hope. It was by no means an easy journey, but they were moving forward one step at a time. Knowing the truth, accepting it, and building a new future from there. That was the path they had chosen.